How's that? Welcome to this second lab, where, well, we're going to see things get a little bit more interesting, because just what I'm going to do now is work with, start, expanding the number of hosts that I'm going to manage. So I can have a host number 2, a host number 3. I usually like to use tree names. I have once host. That has a reference name. I'm going to call it carob. And now a host number 3 that I'm going to call Tala. But well, this is host number 2 and number 3 that I intend to manage from my deploy manager. They are precisely a host that I have virtualized using Proxmox, which is a hypervisor virtualization technology. This is within a LAN environment, and here we would emulate a bit how we could deploy an OmniLite instance using Ansible, but specifically on a LAN. So, what I can set here is infra m equal to LAN. Why? Because I want that precisely. This host has an environment variable. Let's say that it is a behavior as if it was really where it is in LAN. Let's remember that here are the general variables that affect all the hosts, and among them is infra and cloud. But as exceptionally, this host is in LAN, I'm going to put him exclusively that is in a LAN. Now, I have a third host that I have in another cloud. Here, for example, in DigitalOcean, where I have an instance of Ubuntu. Unlike the other one, which is Debian 12, this one is Ubuntu. Anyway, I do not care much because, as we know, this is prepared to pull on modern operating systems that simply have the ability to install Podman. For this case of Ansible, let's say, anyway, here I have my third host that is with a private IP, of course, within a VPS, VPC, and has a public IP, disabled IPv, also important. I have public IP, private IP for my host in the cloud, and for my LAN host, for my LAN host, I am actually connected to this instance. If I look, it is an instance that already has the assign, and that I access via VPN from my deployer tool from my deploy manager. Then notice that I already directly see this is Virgin and has no Podman installed. It has nothing. It is an instance Virgin of Debian 11, if I remember correctly. Yes, Debian 11 with an IP and only a private interface. So this is a scenario. It could be quietly be a LAN scenario, could also be NAT, but I will not explain it now. Then directly both in Ansible host as in Ansible IP LAN, I put the private IP because here I could put a public IP if I access to that host with some port forwarding, for example. And I would have to do it through a public IP, but as well, it is not the case. I'm just in an environment of then to access from my workstation where my deployer tool works. I'm going to do it by the private IP. Then look, the only thing that I do is here to put LAN. And suddenly occurs to me, and I'm going to improvise a little. This third tenant, we are going to make that it works with an external bucket that does not deploy the own minio as sbucket of the stack of OmniLite, but that we use an external one, as we have seen. In the part of Docker Compose, for it I have to back to step, or rather, if to redeclare the variables so that they have a scope local from that container. So I'm going to come here and these parameters. These 3 parameters plus a 4th parameter, which is the bucket URL. I'm going to elaborate them here. 4, I'm going to put them here for use exclusively for this tenant, those bucket values. Then I'm going to come here. Here I'm going to put this course, name of the bucket course, or Tala 2000. Tala, name of the bucket. I am missing the key and the secret that I have to register them. And in the part of the bucket URL also I am going to take it up here so that this host exclusively operate with a URL bucket. I have a comfortable DigitalOcean in this zone because I have already generated an object storage technology for this URL. If I need to create the bucket, and if I'm going to create the pair of access keys, then we will do a more complete example. I am going to go to the DigitalOcean interface. Right here, I have already created that we have used in previous video classes, a bucket called course, a bucket of provider, which I called it course then. Well, no, but we're going to create one because we said we wanted to put Tala as the name of the tenant that I'm using then. I'm going to create a bucket called Tala in the zone where I already have the active service. Here, I'm going to put it inside the space, course 1050.0. Then there, I'm simply creating a bucket already. The object storage service is generated. So now when I go to 5050.0 course, which is my workspace, within this provider, I'm going to count on my server. And here, the bucket. What I'm missing is the part of the key pair to manage the object storage technology. So I'm going to go here, spaces, keys. This depends on each vendor. We've already talked about it. Well, here I'm going to put one that is thousand, this Ansible. And I'm going to create a key pair. I have it here. Here I have the secret that doesn't show it back to me. And here I have the access key. Then notice that we are going to, here, interweaving concepts. On the one hand, I have my OSAND tenant that I have already deployed in the example of the laboratory in the previous class. And now I have two new tenants. One that resides in LAN. If it resides in LAN, it's going to be an all-in-one installation. All components on a host with Debian 11, which I access or reach using SSH. While the third, already from my stock, from my inventory, is called Felling and is accessed to the cloud. Of course, I have the SSH key in here, and as we already saw in here. But the particularity that this instance is going to have is that we're going to do things as we should do them in production when we work in the cloud. And I would say that on-premise is also an interesting option that can be done. Let's say that if I were to put this here, would also work. I could work with the Omniliads instance deployed over the Linux instance of LN, but the recordings and therefore the backups as well could go to a bucket in the cloud. So there would be a hybrid environment. But well, let's stay here. I'm going to generate this instance of Omniliads with its bucket in the same cloud where the host is hosted, the Omnili instance. So now I just have how I'm going to handle 3 Carob logging and course. So down here in the AIO instances, now what I'm going to do is Curso, I'm going to comment it out because I already deployed it. Now I'm going to put Carob Tala, and only on these 2 I want to deploy an action. What action do I want to deploy? An installation action? So I'm here in Ansible, and I'm going to do a /deploy. Action. Install. Minus tenant, and we said we were going to test. Q was called the folder, where inside there we had our host, the inventory, the stock of all the hosts that I want to manage. I am managing an installation on this group of hosts, to which I left my file configured so that it works on them too. Although here there is a whole group of tenants, for the matter of how I left here the declared inventory, we are going to see that only actions are going to be executed on the AIO host family, all in one, specifically on these two. I'm going to take it out so it doesn't confuse. And okay, now the same thing we were looking at, this is generating an installation over two hosts. One is on DigitalOcean, the other is powered with hypervisor technology in an on-premise scenario. This is going to take some time, as we saw in the previous class, for all the tasks to be deployed and 2 more instances to materialize. Well, we're just finishing up, practically wrapping up the installation of these 2 new tenants that we've added to the server inventory file. We discussed the course host, Carob, which is a host in a LAN environment to be utilized in a LAN setup, and the Felling host, which we have deployed on DigitalOcean with the feature of using a cloud server's own bucket. We've created a bucket we've already registered, the object storage service, and we also took advantage of that and created a key pair for this instance for your bucket. Then is already in the part of installation of the components of observability for then to be able to apply monitoring and observability on the instances. In this also, each time that we make a deployment by Ansible, by default, are raised, all the components that make the gate observability are installed to the possibility of extracting metrics from the tenant. Well, then I'm going to, for example, quickly log into my tenant LAN. Now I'm also going to enter tenant that I deployed in the cloud. And over here we are this one. Here. So here I am I'm going to do a reset password 1, environment initialization on both, on the one I have on LAN and the one I have in the cloud. And now I need to manage and also need to handle both. So we should have a couple of new instances. We are with the one we were using from the lab. And we are now opening the next 2 instances. This is the one from the cloud, and well, here we have the other one. Let's see, I'm missing this one. But it's because I put the URL wrong. It's 144. Cloud. Let's whiten the password. The same. Here. Admin first login. So well, let's leave around. Tied the 3. the 3 hosts. And there we are, LAN environment that we have already deployed in the lab 1, and environment that we have up now in the second lab. Here, what I'm going to do quickly, all of a sudden, is upload an audio to the platform 2. Well, check this out. What we have set up with respect to the bucket. So I'm now going to come here to my bucket, Tala. I'm going to open it, and we should see already here finished uploading an audio from IBR, an audio from an audio prompt here in media root. Asterisks, predefined audio, and this one too. All the WAP apps. And here, notice that this is it. So this file that I just uploaded, as well as the recordings that I am going to make later. For example, well, it would not have to trust a trunk, but, well, both the agent recordings and the audios we already know. Here begins to play the configuration of operating with an external bucket. So, this instance that I have here, for example, we are going to see that it does not have Minioan installed, unlike this one, which is the one we deploy in LAN. Where is the mini observer here? That the object storage is within the same stack, within the same host, while here, if we do this, for example, we list the environment variables of Nginx. We see that is talking about. Or for, which is who then inserts the recordings in the bucket. We see that the configuration of object storage at the level of environment variables of the asterisk component point to, and with a pair of keys, one bucket, but above all, this, look at the endpoint where it's going to hit, where it's going to try to move the asterisk recordings every time it executes a call, usand versus an instance. All in one with the bucket right there, deployed. Where, note that the endpoint of the bucket is HTTP. Localhost 9000, that is where Minion operates versus the endpoint in this other deployment with the external bucket of the provider, pointing the endpoint to of the object storage provider. With this, we can say that we culminated lab number 2. That, well, already implies, or we can already see how starts to look the management of multiple Omnily instances from a centralized node managing these instances. We also saw that, well, we can deploy one in the cloud, one in a LAN environment, one in a cloud environment, but with external bucket. And so, well, in the course of the labs, we will be covering different possibilities. The most interesting thing of all is already to start making the relationship between these hosts that we are going to be declaring, in some cases with some variables, that are going to apply 100% to the host that is declared. Ausen, taking into account that here in the second section of the file, where all the variables go, we know that all these variables impact on the hosts unless they are explicitly declared. They're inside the host, as we have seen, and well, finally, the third part of the file, the third section of this inventory file, which is where we are going to be listing or commenting the hosts on which we want to perform the actions.